Oh, yeah.
If you can, yeah. All right. Well, we're good. We can go whenever.
And 3, 2, 1. I am here with Eric Melson, the author and local novelist here in Regina. He's also a musician. He just wrote this lovely book called The Musician's Compass, which comes with music and the whole get-go. He just did a TED Talk last night. He has a really cool story. So, and we are fucking really good friends.
That's right. It's good to be here,
Friends
boys.
for a minute.
So it has been awesome to see the journey. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. How are you, man?
Doing great. Doing really good.
Great, feeling good?
Yeah, man. Spring has sprung.
Spring
has sprung. Absolutely.
That's for sure. It's so gorgeous out, man. It was just a hell winter.
Yeah. I was fortunate enough to miss most of it.
Where were you?
I was in Germany for 3 weeks in January, and then the UK for 3 weeks in February.
Wow, so you avoided the worst month in the history of Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck. So bad, man.
Yeah.
I went away for 1 week and I came back, but it was like I never left. It
Honestly,
was
just the worst.
Yeah.
Freezing cold, man.
Yeah. I got back and still had like 10 days, 2 weeks of it, like the minus 20 stuff. And it's one of those things that, like, it's such a cliche to talk about the weather, but when you're anywhere you're traveling, it's like, oh, you're Canadian. Like, is it cold there? Yeah. And it's like, yeah, it's cold there, but you don't really understand how much it shapes the mentality of the people here.
Yeah,
like,
the
if you've never done a
perception.
winter in Regina,
Yeah.
like I wouldn't like put it at the top of your bucket list, but it's a life experience.
Yeah, it really is. Like, people don't understand what minus 40 actually feels like. Like, they just don't get it.
No, we had a buddy over today, or we went for brunch with like a guy who's from the States.
Yeah.
And he's from Cali, so I think it was his first winter here.
He grew up in Arizona.
Yeah.
So it's like the desert.
It's
like polar opposites.
He literally couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
He was just like, honestly, you like get burnt when you touch things.
Yeah.
It was just like, honestly, that's how cold it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's cliche talking about the weather, but it's Canada, and you know, like I say at work, if you didn't have the weather to talk about, what would you talk about? Fridays. Okay, man. So life's good or what? You just got back from tour?
Yeah.
How was it?
Tour's great. Yeah.
Were you touring in Germany? Like, were you playing in Germany?
Yeah. So the tour in Germany was different than the tour in February. Germany was with my trio, and it was like the Musician's Compass book, album, release tour. And I've done a handful of tours in Germany, like as a solo act or opening for the Dead South usually.
Yeah.
And this was my first time going over there, not opening for anybody and taking a band. I've always wanted to take my pals over there, and so it was like a lot of cafe shows and like a few punk bars and just anywhere who would have us. And
How do you book a tour overseas?
so I've just got from touring over there a bunch, some really wonderful contacts.
That's
and a good friend of mine, shout out to Sarah, she books tours for us.
Nice.
And
Shout out Sarah.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. That's sweet. So you're going to be home for a while or what?
Yeah. So
You're going to plant it. Just take it easy.
Much needed. I've been, well, I'm sure you guys know how it is, but like, been kind of trying to do this full-time artist thing for about four or 5 years now. And it's, I went from like a 40-hour week job to more than that.
Yeah.
You know, like every second of your day, you're thinking about art and then thinking
when
about how
it's
to market it and think about like, there's a billion different little jobs you do as a creative.
100%.
And I've been just nosing the grindstone for like 4 years.
Yeah.
And getting home from like all of the tours, like I released this thing in September, toured Western Canada, all of the US, Germany and the UK, and it's been awesome, but like I just need to be home. And
so
find some routine, find some stable ground, and like be a human being.
Yeah, I'll give the listeners a little bit of context, but I met Eric probably, I guess it was, we'll just say 10 years ago for the hell of it. I think I started. Eric's a local musician here in Regina. I'm also a local musician here from Moose Jaw, but I'm here in Regina now. Frank's also a musician. But I met Eric through a band that I still play in called Andino Sons, and we just started jamming, and Eric played in the band for a bit, and
for a long time.
For a long time.
A really long time.
Yeah, and so that's how I met you. When I first met Eric, for the listeners out there, Eric was a commercial real estate agent.
That's correct.
40-hour work week, like he was explaining, and one day just kind of woke up and said it's...
Explain that.
It's not my life.
Take us through that moment.
Take us through the journey, man, when you woke up and said, I gotta do something else.
Yeah, so it definitely wasn't a wake up one day thing, but so I started doing commercial real estate. I was 22 maybe. Like I finished university right away, traveled a little bit, and then I worked a construction job in the solar industry. So I was going all over the province installing solar panels, which was great. I was learning a lot, but you know, it was like drive up to North Battleford or Cut Knife or some random place and stay there for a week, and it was like 14-hour days. And when it started to get cold, and I've kind of got like bad circulation, so I'm out there working and I can't feel my hands or feet, and I just like, man, I got to think of something else.
Yeah.
And so I have a business degree, and my dad has been in commercial real estate forever.
Yep.
And so started working for them, their company, and it was really great. Like that job.
Yeah, you made money.
I made money, and it was a really good time because the industry was aging. So when I came in, I was like the only young guy in town.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I was willing to work hard. So a lot of these guys were like looking to do less.
Yeah.
So it was perfect time to pick up some slack.
Yeah.
And I learned so much about Regina and how the city is really run.
For sure.
You know, it's like who makes the decisions of what's going up where, and like it was a really good education in like, I don't know, civic politics and planning and stuff.
For sure.
For sure.
And
municipal shit.
Yeah. So I did that for like 4 years, and I was kind of getting like I don't know if you want to call it the classic quarter life crisis or the Saturn returns. I don't know if you're familiar with that terminology, but I was kind of just looking around me. It's like, okay, well, I've got now for the first time in my life, like a little cushion of dough.
For sure.
And I'm like, I know that I have enough. I don't have like any kids or any significant responsibilities.
Yep.
And
you had a house, right?
I had a house. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So you had assets. So you had that to work with too, right?
Totally. Yeah. And I was very methodical about it. Like, I'm not a dummy about how money works. And
for sure.
So I had a plan. I was working, and I was looking around and just seeing a lot of guys who were making great money, but kind of spending it as fast as they could make it.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of a minimalist at heart. And I thought, look, if I can find a way to exist, I can work a lot less for a minute. Like, I know that I don't want to be like, I've been living hand to mouth, like, moving basement suite to basement suite or friend's couch to friend's couch, like for years now. And it's been like, I haven't like properly worked since I left.
It's a different life.
Totally different lifestyle.
Yeah.
But I knew that if I didn't leave at that time, when I was 27, I wouldn't want to like go on tour and sleep on floors. So there's this urgency.
You were like a lifer. You'd either a lifer in your career or it's now or never.
Yeah. With the idea that like if I go and stumble around for a few years, I can always move somewhere and focus on making money again. Whatever
like
job.
Like, the job will always be there. Now's the time to go and just have fun and do what you want.
Totally. Yeah.
Will the job always be there?
The real estate job?
Yeah.
I mean, like
I think any job though in general, like you would be fine at the end of the day.
If you got a degree.
If you let's say if the artistry failed, you would come back around and be completely fine.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and I don't even think it's because the way you did it is a lot different. You didn't you weren't 18 playing music in your basement and wanting to go out and make the dream alive. You did it a little bit differently where it wasn't necessary. There's no failing in it. You did it for, even if you failed, it'd be success. You know, like you did it for yourself, not really to get shit out there, you know, and like it was more a personal journey, I guess, and your sake.
Do you think that, like looking back in hindsight, this was what, 4 years ago?
4
years ago. Do you think you needed to have that plan? Like, do you think you could have just quit cold turkey whether or not you had that cushion of money? Or do you think it would have all worked out either way?
I think it would have worked out either way, but there's, I don't know if you guys have ever heard about this concept of universal basic income.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So
100%.
So
that's Andrew Yang, or a Democratic. He's a politician.
Yeah, I'm not sure the
in
source
States,
of it,
but he's thinking about that shit.
Yeah, so I think that because I had the cushion and like, you know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that every
Right.
human needs to worry about, like food and shelter and all that stuff, and
Yeah.
then you can start focusing on some of the higher needs.
For sure.
Well, because I had the cushion of money, when I went to start making art, my priorities were a little bit different than somebody who had to make a kill every month.
For sure.
Right.
So like I knew that if I made
Yeah,
my dream project and I didn't sell it, like I'm
You'd
gonna be
still
okay.
be okay. Yeah.
It's all good.
And so it entirely freed up the way I made these projects. And like I got a Word document on my computer that's like that lists the reasons why I do it, because it's
For
so
sure.
easy to lose sight of like why you're making art project.
Right.
Of course.
And for
Especially
that
when you're-
reason, like these things formed in like a really, really cool way that taught me so much shit. Taught me
Right.
so much shit.
Yeah.
But you think like if you would have had that pressure of like you have to do good this month, that it would have like motivated you in some other way to
Well, I think
do good?
it would affect art in a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's but you're so comfortable. You could just write a song. You know, there's no pressure. It's different. It's a different type of art. It probably
you can take a me day.
yeah, and it honestly probably affected the way you wrote and the way you did. So you're now an author of 2 novels.
That's right.
I Am Free was your first novel.
Yep.
How did
Now-
that come together?
And that was crazy. So I'm like a month. I remember waking up the first Monday that I was unemployed. And this was like the first Monday since I was like 5.
Yeah.
But that was the best feeling
It's
ever.
like, holy, like I
can do what I want.
I can do what I want. And so,
And it's crazy to have I mean, you're unemployed but comfortably unemployed. So that must be like a crazy feeling. Anyways, of course go on, but
Yeah.
I just that's a different feeling altogether, right?
yeah. And it was one of those things like I knew, and every second of my life, I'm aware
Yeah, you
of
knew
the
your
privilege.
privilege. Of course.
And but at the same time, like also aware of how I saw all of my friends like partying and traveling and doing all this stuff, and like when you're kind of, I'm air quoting here, supposed to in your early 20s, and I was like, I'm taking a different path, and it was like
Yeah.
it was I had a lot of really, really lonely times, and so when I finally got there, it was like a mix of disbelief but
Yeah.
also this pressure. Like, okay, this is what I sacrificed for.
Right. So
it's
Now,
Time to like prove myself.
I've got to use this time. I can't
Right.
just like sit around. And so I just, okay, well, what do I got? And I kind of went through my journals and found like all of these songs, and I called up Bender,
Nice, yeah.
shout out Bender, and just started making these tunes. But in between recording sessions, because he was only available like here and there because he was busy, I called him up. I'm like, fit me in. He's like, okay.
Yeah.
And I had all this time in between songs, and around this time, I was noticing like every other day a pal of mine was like releasing a record on Facebook.
Yeah.
And I would go and I would like stream the first song and then stream half the second song and then just like move on to the next bit of content.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. So if music is becoming sort of like this disposable,
Yeah.
I was scared of that's what my thing would be. So I had this idea of like writing a short story to go with every song.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
my time in between, I started writing, and I am,
Brilliant idea, man.
Time in between recording.
yeah.
Like to find a way to like engage the listener
In a
Totally.
in a different way.
And
Yeah.
give the song like some
Meaning.
or perspective. Like you guys got to know like about buying a CD in high school and then reading the liner
Reading the
notes.
whole thing.
man.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Totally.
Fuck.
Full experience.
I
Not a
miss
thing now.
those days, dude.
Seriously, not a thing, but I guess like Apple now is doing questionnaire for every song.
Oh, nice.
So now when bands release an album, every song, the artist explains what the song's about.
But like, so what if you're an artist that doesn't want to?
Well, then
like,
you don't have to.
give an interpretation of your song or whatever.
Then you probably just don't have to. But you woke up on that Monday.
So starting
When was this, by the way?
So this would have been December, early December 2014.
Wow, that's crazy, man.
And so I wrote all these short stories, and I like don't know anything about writing. I'm just following my heart.
Just going with it.
And,
You don't need to know anything about writing if you're just.
But I bet you learned that you do need to know a lot about
Yeah.
writing.
oh man, and I've learned
Because I remember when I saw you at some point in the last 4 years at Regina Beach, and you were explaining to me the process of making a book.
Yeah.
And it blew my mind, like how fucking complicated and complex just getting a book published was.
Yeah.
So like, what did you learn then when you started to write these short stories? Like, how was the process?
Well, so I have so much to say about this. Like there's
Start
Say
on
it,
that,
baby, say
Start
it.
on that fucking Monday when you woke up and you had the day, but you also knew I have to make use of this time that I have because I just quit a great job with good money and with a solid life and a house, and now here I am. I'm going to change. I'm going to be an artist.
yeah.
An artist fucking 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
It's no longer fucking 40 hours a week. It's 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
So, like, when you woke up that Monday, what did you do? You pulled out journals. You did all of that. And what was the process, man?
Well, the whole first cycle of making the book or making the album and book and then releasing it, all of it was just, it was like walking around the world blind. It's like, I don't know how to do this. I'm figuring this out every step.
Yeah.
And then with the second one, I knew how to do it. So the whole thing came together differently. And in the 4 years or 4.5 years, my days are structured so wonderfully now.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of wasted time and but I still found time to like finish. And I wrote these short stories, and I found a local publisher in town, and I sent them to her, and she read the short stories and said like, yeah, these are okay, but I don't think they would sell as a book. They would sell like maybe a poetry book. They're very like obscure, kind of like off market
Niche book.
Did that bruise the ego at all, or deter you from writing?
Or did it
Hearing that,
light a fire under you?
or did it? Were you like, well, I got more? You just fucking wait.
Well, I mean, yeah, and I see it with a lot of people who like try writing for the first time, and they think the first thing they make is so profound. And I was totally that guy. Like I thought I was, I'm the next whatever, and I'm writing this shit. And
It ain't easy.
no, and because there's just so much to learn. And she said, but there's a common story through these essays, these short stories. Like take them back and maybe try to put it into one thing. Boom. So the light bulb goes on. I come back, I consolidate the short stories over the summertime and trim down all of the songs I recorded to just the ones that told the story. And that was the birth of like the novel album combo. So I didn't plan that. It was just like
It's how it was.
the creative muses had this vision, and I just was following it.
For sure.
And so
And then so you wrote I Am Free.
yeah. So that was the first one, I'm Free.
Awesome shit.
And what was just for the listeners, like what's the storyline of the book?
So the storyline
And music, I guess.
is it's a fictional autobiographical account of my time leaving my job. So sort of the thought process of just contemplating safety and feeling the pull to move on to something else, but having to justify it. And the book really I wanted to talk about how it feels or how it felt to be, how to live through a winter in Regina.
Yeah. Oh.
And just the feelings of isolation and darkness.
Yeah.
And
Dude, and that doesn't happen in a lot of places. Like, look at us, like the minute the sun comes out and spring has sprung, as you say, like
dude.
everyone wants to be outside. Everyone's all of a sudden in a great mood. Like you can feel it.
Yeah, it's
but
crazy.
But in the winter, like middle of February, dude, everyone had the blues. Like especially me. I mean, you were in Europe, but
But everyone
like,
I talked to, it was
dude,
like,
it was
fuck.
treacherous, and people don't understand that. Like we literally can't leave our house. We'll die.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
that's cool. That's cool that you decided to write it on that, and it's fictional.
Yeah,
I think that. Well, I'm a avid reader, and my favorite author is Hemingway. But he is a firm believer that if you just write about what's true, you'll write amazing.
Yeah.
So you writing "I Am Free" about, although it's fictional and autobiographical, it's true.
Yeah.
There's truth to it, and there's truth to you growing up in Regina, you working a 40-hour-a-week job where you're just kind of your soul's
going
unhappy,
through the motions,
you know, and all of that. So writing true helps, you know, and that's probably how you eventually got that story out there. Is you were like, you know what, I'm just gonna write about experiences.
Yeah.
So how did it go then? The first book.
It was a amazing experience. Like, I've always been a huge advocate of people traveling because, and travel, like, go and do comfortable rest travel, then go and do challenging, question your life travel. I think everyone needs to do that.
For sure.
But writing a book is the same thing of like traveling to sub-Saharan Africa, but in your own head.
Yeah.
I sat down and every day it's like I write something and be like, wait a minute, is that true? So it was this tremendous force of me questioning and questioning my values at a really pivotal time in my life when I was like kind of becoming my own man, you know, like that phase of my life, and I'm writing about the change. Some days my head would get so like clouded by like
swelled up.
Yeah.
Fuck.
So there was a lot of that, but like that was like doing a good leg day at the gym for my brain. You know
for sure. Absolutely, man.
Of course, man. Yeah.
It's crazy. Like people don't always give that sort of the thought. Like I remember when I moved to Chile, however many years ago, I would be learning Spanish and trying to like communicate with these people. And I would get home at the end of every day and be exhausted. Yeah. Just from the mental workout that it was. Yeah. And that was probably just like what you felt trying to write a book, going through this weird moment in your life where you're literally just becoming your own person and having the time to do it and actually give it the sort of, I guess, time that it deserves, and that like someone like me who has a job or Tony who has a job might not have the time to sort of actually like sit down and focus and reflect on yourself.
Yeah. I can say now, looking back at it, like, there's like on the recording side and the production side and some of the word choice and like so many of the way it was packaged and the way I marketed it, like so many just cringe-worthy.
Oh, dude, that happens with everything.
That's literally with anything.
It happens with anything. Any artist puts
out. We think about that the first episode of our podcast. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean?
Like weird, man. Any artist who puts out anything, that's a year later, man. There's cringe moments. Yeah. You're like, why'd I do that?
But you could also take away probably some amazing things from that as well. Like they're as much of good as probably bad.
Yeah, I'm as much cringeworthy stuff is in there. Like I hold that little project. I'm like, man, I did it. And I crossed the finish line. Yeah. And this was the first step to like, it taught me so much that I know anything I do from now on is going to be better.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's amazing about art is that, I mean, everyone's really a critic of their own work. Everyone knows that. That's super common in artistry. But those cringe things, they mean something to someone.
Sure.
Who got that art.
Yeah.
Who got that first album. So many bands.
Chemical Girl.
Yeah. So many bands out there hate their fucking first album. But it was their debut album. And people love it.
Tom Green hates Freddie Got Fingered.
Yeah, I know.
Makes no sense.
Makes no sense at all. So what is it like when you first got in touch with that editor? I'm interested in this.
Yeah.
And they send it back and say, this is shit. Do this again. I don't like it. And it was the first time where someone sat down, read your work, and then didn't like it. Like, of course, that's going to happen in edits.
Yeah.
In a constructive way.
Yeah.
I'm sure an editor's constructive.
Yeah.
but there's got to be times where they're like, you don't need that fucking sentence, and you love that sentence.
Yeah.
What's that like?
I think that with the writing, because I knew I was kind of lost, I was really open. I was really craving. Like I wish I would have had more people been able to like knock me down.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been a little bit different with the music, and I was in fact to a fault over controlling. Like I did everything on the first record.
Yeah.
And because I just, you know, naive in the thoughts that like I thought I knew everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I look back on it now and it's like, if somebody else would have had their hands on this, I think it would have been an overall better project. So
see, I was going to ask if the collaboration process you were kind of already used to because you're a musician, you've recorded before other albums, that you might already be used to sort of somebody saying, you know, hey, maybe change this part or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was your baby.
Yeah.
So you didn't want to budge.
Yeah, and the form of in writing, there's two different types of editing, and I'm gonna get the names wrong, substantive editing and qualitative, whatever. But one of them is like focuses on the mechanics of the writing, like the grammar, and that was mostly what I had. Yeah. And then the other type of writing or editor is one who says like, you need to cut chapter 3, you need to do this and that, and I didn't really have that. I had definitely had some suggestions, but it wasn't the main thing my editor was looking for. And
it must be so weird to write something like that. You're just like, that sentence is just so legit, and then you get an edit back, and it's like, yeah, we don't need that. That doesn't even need to be there.
So when you brought it to the publisher, do you like? What's the process like? You found a publisher. And you just took your book to them and they just read it? Because I mean, if I was a publisher and some random person that I don't know came and brought me a book, I don't know if I'd read it. So like, how does that work? Like, how did you get them to read it?
Right. So there's different forms of editing, publishing. On this one end of the spectrum is traditional publishing, which is you submit a manuscript to like an existing publisher, and they take your story and they'll buy it from you, and they'll like basically edit it and along with you form it into what it needs to be, and then they take it and they're in charge of selling it, and like you kind of hand it off, and they do everything else, and that's kind of like the dream, you know, in a lot of ways, because you get paid for your thing, and then somebody else is selling it.
They deal with the business,
and then you have deadlines, and you just got to make them. So literally, your job is just to sit in your room and write.
But this wasn't that.
No, and then on the other end of the spectrum is self-publishing, where you pretty much do everything on your own or hire freelancers. You coordinate with the printers, and then you have your own thing. I did a hybrid, which the publisher in town here, your Nicholsworth Publishing, basically I would pay an hourly rate for her editing time. Okay. And she also did the layout and coordination with the printers. Okay. And all that, and did like the cover layout, and she's a wizard with all that stuff.
Okay. So
did you get grants, or like how did you fund that, or was that just right out of pocket?
That was straight up out of pocket.
Awesome. That so you believed in it at least.
Yeah. She actually was great in writing a grant to cover some of the production costs.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So I did get some grant money on that first project, but it was kind of just cobbling up like.
Well, you had a
couple hours of studio here and there, and a little bit of money, and
you also had that comfort, like going back to our conversation earlier.
But
you had that money.
It's cool that you believed in the project though, to like self-fund it. Yeah. Like that's a risk that a lot of people, I would assume, aren't willing to take.
It's a completely normal thing in the world of art, though. I have put my own money in so many endeavors.
Yeah.
Music. Yeah. Like literally, probably more of my money than anyone's put other money in.
But would you say that it's like different though when you're in a band and you have 5 people kind of investing in something, whereas when it's just yourself?
Yeah, see, like that's why I've never been a huge proponent on solo, being a solo artist.
It's just too expensive.
No, it's that, and like I find that when you collaborate, you get a much better result, and it doesn't matter and that's why I've always been a fan of bands. Yeah. I like the organic feel of everyone bringing in stuff, and that's why I've never been good at solo artist because I can't sit there and write a song really by myself and be like, that's good. You know, I need to have someone else being like, I'm going to add this riff, or I'm going to add this bass lick, or this drum roll. Or,
but that's kind of what you learned, I guess, in writing this first project, right? Is that like maybe a little more collaboration would have been helpful.
Yeah, and I totally did that for number 2.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. You went on tour. You toured I Am Free.
Yep.
Do
you go to Europe, Western Canada, Europe?
I did. It's so funny. I released it, booked a CD release show in Regina, did it, and then
I worked merch.
Yeah, man.
I was your merch guy that show. Yeah, for I Am Free, the book release, man. And I remember you like reading the first chapter. You read the first chapter. It was fucking awesome.
That's so
and then
cool,
I just
man.
went home and read the book, and I was like, that's fucking dope.
Sweet.
Writing is amazing. If you can be a good writer, it's something that I've always found to be amazing. So I was like so into it. And you just started touring, you started living, you did it.
How long did you tour on that album?
Like hardly at all, man. That was, life got a little, I don't want to say dark because it was still great, but I struggled because I released the project and then, it's like, oh fuck, like I still got a whole bunch more copies of these. Like, how am I going to move them? And so I try to start booking shows, but it's, the same thing. Like, people aren't answering your emails. And so it was a huge slap in the face about grassroots touring and grassroots marketing. And I ended up spending a couple of months trying to figure out like the latest and greatest in online marketing, learning about email lists and landing pages.
For sure. But that's cool
getting
that
people
you had to learn
subscribe to your emails so you can constantly
figuring
push
out
content.
the right way to get your what you're trying to do to the masses.
Pretty much you're just shoving your shit in people's faces.
People
and
get degrees.
hope that someone is like, okay,
people
yeah,
get degrees
finally.
and working full-time jobs for that shit. So like that's cool that you kind of were forced, for a better word, to like learn that. And you did it yourself.
Man, and I learned so much about the internet and human nature and art. And like I was in a position to compromise. Like I feel like the project came from such a pure, spirited source. The intention of it. And then all of a sudden, like, well, if I want, these are options I can do if I want to sell it. And then I got all paranoid about, like, I don't like putting my face all over the internet.
Dude, I know that feeling for sure, 100%.
That's when things got really, really
challenging.
Really challenging.
And because we have a tendency to always think in the future. So you're thinking like, I'm going to say the wrong thing, and then one day if I need a job or like literally my life is out.
Are you thinking that though, or are you fully committed at this point to artistry?
I'm fully committed to like.
But in the dark time, I mean.
Oh, like, in the dark time.
In the dark, challenging time when you're trying to figure out how to market yourself.
So what made it so dark?
Just the like I was spending my days being creative. And like following the muses and like these learning so much and at the end of every day I look back and be like, I made something. And then all of a sudden there's this pressure to like
this other reality.
Yeah, and I'm like I'm spending 10 hours a day in front of my computer building websites and like I'm getting fucking neck cramps because I'm at my computer all day. It's like, man, I thought I tried getting away from this and I ended up just working harder. And it's
harder because it's yours.
And that too, but also like making negative money. And before when I was working that hard, it's like I was making some dough.
For sure.
And now it's like I'm working hard, and it's like so you feel
seeing
crazy.
The payoff
so
right
like
away.
I gotta pay rent.
I had a very similar experience when I first started my photography business too. It was like that. It was like, what? Like it cost me how much to have a website like for a year and like all these things that you aren't thinking about when you're kind of like, okay, I'm ready to go full in on this art thing, and then when you're kind of forced to confront the reality of the business side of it, it's like kind of a kick in the ass, man, in a good way and in a bad way. Like for me, it was good because it kind of motivated me to, I guess, learn the same way, I guess, with you, how you had to learn marketing and whatever. But it also kind of sucks because, like, at the end of the day, you just want to do what you love, which is the craft. It's not the fucking business side of things. And it's not like you can just hire a manager to do it all when you don't have any money, you know? Like,
that's what's crazy about, like, untapped talent, too. Like, how many amazing artists are out there, but you just never hear of them. And you never will. Because, like, there's no means that they have.
There's no luck. There's
to get that out there, you know? Yeah, that's crazy. So I Am Free came out. You toured it. You lived it. You also toured with the Dead South, so that was money in your pocket.
Yep.
So you're
local Regina band, pretty big band here. Yeah. I would say.
Yeah. So you're also kind of a session musician, maybe, in a way. Well, I mean, I've been playing with you forever. You're amazing, but you're
like a session musician.
Yeah,
kind of.
but so it's something that you can do. So you toured with Dead South, got Del Suelo's name out there. So people started to notice Del Suelo. You opened up for them.
Yeah.
What's opening up like? So you're on the tour for I'm Free, and you are opening up a show with a folk band who's huge.
Yeah.
And you're opening up as a solo act. So. Yeah. I mean, people aren't, like, they're listening, but they're not. Like, they just want the next act to come up.
Well, they're just not necessarily there for your project. Yeah. But then that's kind of exciting, or no?
Yeah, like, I always remember when we would open tours with way bigger bands when we first started. Our goal was to absolutely destroy the bands after us.
Yeah.
So, but because we were a band, that was easier.
Yeah. But
you're a solo act. What's that like?
Well, I got to say, like, one of my intentions in making the art was, like, it's going to sound corny, but I wanted to figure out, who am I?
Yeah.
You know, like, this, like, existential quarter-life crisis, like, what am I doing? What's my purpose here on the planet? All this shit. So I got, like, so I was playing cello, filling in for Danny with the Dead South.
Yeah.
And my project just came out, and it's like, hey, can I open? Yeah, they're cool with that. So...
do they have to get the okay for you to open, or do they get to choose their opener now that they're a big band? Like, how does that?
Yeah, they get to choose.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, there's like a lot of considerations, you know, with their record labels and things.
Yeah.
But
sorry, just interested in that. But go ahead, man.
So I'm opening, and like I'm like, oh, I guess I'm solo musician guy.
Yeah.
I really just wanted to have this solo project, but play with musicians. I love playing with bands.
Right,
of course.
But here's this great gig to play in front of people. So, all right, I'll do it.
Of course, to take it.
So,
and it's a way to get your shit out there, right?
Yeah. So thus began this solo artist journey. And I went from doing like maybe a couple in my life to now having done a few hundred.
Yeah.
And it's something that I never thought I would love or even do, but it's become a pretty big part of my life, being a solo performer.
Solo performer and an opener too, right?
And an opener. And so, like, not to jump ahead too far, but the last tours I did with them across the US and in the UK were like, we played a couple shows where they had sold out over 2,000 person venues.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm the first guy to go up, so I go up with an acoustic guitar.
It's fucking crazy,
and
man.
See like 2,000 people staring at me.
Yeah. Silencing a crowd that big.
And it's like, they're not there to see me. They don't know who I am. I mean, there's the odd person who knows.
Yeah.
And it's like, how can I maintain their attention and respect for 15 minutes?
Which is fucking hard.
So do you add a lot of talking into your set, like to engage with the crowd? Or is it just like, hey, I'm Eric. This is Del Suelo. Here I go. I know you guys aren't here to see me. The next act will be up in 40 minutes, but here I go.
You know how, like, if you ever hear comedians talk about how they refine their set by doing their set.
Yep, of course.
Like, you go, like, try a joke, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so I found
you work it out.
I found that over the time, like, there's certain songs that maybe the melody or the tempo would be too slow. I'd see people kind of like start to get bored.
Drift off.
So that song gets axed. And then, so I realized that once I hit the 20-minute mark, I've like, they're going to be not interested anymore. So I have to keep it 20 or less. So pick my 5 best songs, have like a joke or two, make sure to provide some context. I'd always be like, hey, opening for the Dead South, we're all here to see them. I filled in for their cello player, and it's like, oh, all of a sudden there's a connection. Like,
Yeah,
he
of
knows
course.
them, and
Yeah.
then maybe they'll pay a little bit more attention, and just like by the end of it, I was just playing like the most like punk rock songs I had.
Yeah.
Because like the bigger my movements,
Energy,
and
right.
the big, yeah, seriously, man, like the
For
bigger my
sure.
movements and the
Yeah.
more passion I put into my voice, like
Of course.
they don't care about, or not that they don't care, but it's really hard to translate like little details in your
So is
music.
that
Of
why your new
course,
album's a
man,
little
of
bit more
course.
upbeat and a little bit more like you got electric and some wah pedals going there, and then you bought the
Did we even mention that he plays the intro track to our podcast? Did we even
Oh
say that?
yeah. We didn't say.
I don't think we even
but
said
it
that.
was actually I kind of wanted to leave it to the end to be a surprise. Like you were gonna pick up the acoustic and then I was gonna harmonize, but it's not a surprise. But yeah, Del Suelo provides the intro
Dude.
and the outro to our podcast. The song "Pack Rats."
The sickest
you can check
tune
it out on
ever.
Apple Music and Spotify. And,
It's on YouTube.
Thanks for
the
that, boys,
video
by
is
the way.
so
Yeah.
dope.
of course, man. No,
Thanks,
thank you,
boys.
thank you, dude, for doing that free of charge.
Of course.
I mean, if the podcast ever picks up steam, then feel free to.
I'm getting paid here, boys.
No, hey, grab another one too if you want.
Yeah, I'm just about done this.
Okay, yeah. They're endless,
Perfect.
endless. I
So
grabbed.
so then when did you decide on wanting to do a second book? Was it always I guess it probably was always sort of a plan, but when did you like decide to pull the trigger and go through all the shit again that you
Yeah. So I release I am free, and I kind of learn about, okay, whoa, now I know what it takes. And
For sure.
I was just kind of like, I'm just going to wait for the idea to come around. And it would have been August 2016.
Wow.
And I did a little promo tour with the Dead South in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And we finished playing in a record store in Hamburg. And we're packing up our gear, and this guy comes to me and he says, or we're talking after the show, and I'm like, oh yeah, I just got to like load the van. And he's like, oh, okay, well, you're just in phase 3 then. And maybe in phase 4 we can hang out. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, phase 1's playing the show. Phase 2 is packing your gear up. Phase 3 is at the merch table or whatever. He had these things. And I was like, oh, dude, that's so cool. I've kind of got like a left brain mathy kind of orientation. So I love it when people
that's
have
cool,
ways
yeah.
of explaining things.
Dude, that's cool, man. That's
That
an
is
awesome
cool.
inspiration.
I
Like,
never thought
fuck.
about that.
So that night or the next night, we were having beers at a bar, and I was talking with Colton from the Dead South about these steps, and we kind of just got rolling with it, and it ended up being like a full day worth of steps, like 12 steps. And that was it. Like I could not stop thinking about this concept, and
Do you know the guy's name?
I don't.
Wow.
I don't.
cool.
If you
I
ever,
like that.
if
That's sweet.
this guy ever hears about this project or from this podcast, like please reach out to me.
Yeah, of course.
No, but that's really cool that you don't know who it is, because it's like, oh, it's the man of mystery that created it all.
Yeah, and like he obviously was a touring musician, so
Yeah.
he could have been like a famous German guy. Like I had no idea. He's just
Yeah.
a guy talking to me, but
That's so cool.
So yeah, he comes. He says you're in phase. So you loaded the van and had beers, and then is that like? Did you start writing right away?
so that was the concept, and I started thinking about it a lot, and I knew I wanted to write something about touring because at this point I had been on the road for a couple of years, and it's such a surreal experience.
Yeah, it's amazing, but it's also a grind.
Yeah.
And it's also unhealthy, and you have to find ways to treat your body right,
I
treat
couldn't
your mind
imagine.
right.
I couldn't imagine being in Europe though and touring. Like
Yeah.
touring at home in Canada where everything's familiar is one thing, but when you're in Germany, in the middle of Germany, you have no idea where you are. Fucking old Bavaria. Like
Yeah, it's also a little easier though to tour those places because places are so close.
Mm-hmm.
So you
sure.
don't have to spend a lot of money to get to the next place. Touring Canada is like a different breed. You have to drive
God.
8 hours to
Yeah.
the next.
is it easier
city.
though?
I like this is obviously a subjective thing, but I would say that of like the developed Western world, whatever you want to call it, I would say that Western Canada has like the worst audiences.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
and not like
100%.
like I'm talking like
agree.
they're loving people all over Western Canada, but as far as the
Unless you're
culture of
Drake.
watching bands,
Oh,
Yeah.
like people
Dude.
will drink beers right in front of you, and they'll talk through your set, and they'll be on their phone. But when you play in Germany, like the shows always start on time and people watch you. And when the show's over, they'll buy some of your merch. And it's like this fully functioning music community.
That's how I think of Europe too, man.
Europe, that's why Europe has such an amazing reputation with music.
Any type of music,
Japan,
metal.
Same. Like, I don't know if you've ever been to Asia or any of those countries, but Japan apparently is like one of the greatest places to tour. Bender, our engineer, has toured there a bunch of times. So, yeah. So that's crazy, man. And then the book came.
So the Musician's Compass started off with the idea of a story, and I was having it's a story that was driven by, like, I guess, patterns. Like, the whole story is told and the whole album is told according to like preconceived mathematical formulas.
Nice.
And it's like embedded in the architecture of the story. And so it was kind of like out of nowhere, I was given this form, and I just had to like show up every day for a couple hours and sort of paint by numbers. Like, this is what needs to happen in this chapter. This is what needs to happen in this song.
So was it an easier book to write because of that?
The process was like reversed then, because before it was music first, and then it formed into a book. This time it was the book, the story, that kind of led the music.
Are you guys familiar with the Spanish architect Gaudi?
No.
He's kind of become extra mainstream these days because he's subject of the latest Dan Brown novel.
Okay, yeah.
But he's the guy who did La Sagrada Familia in Barcelona.
Oh wow.
And he's got like crazy. A bunch of houses he built in Barcelona that's like surrealism. It looks like a Dali.
Yeah, that like crazy, what is it called? The Sagrada? No, you just said it.
The church is La Sagrada Familia.
Yeah, that church is crazy, man.
So this guy, he's absolutely one of a kind. And you go and you check out his stuff, and it absolutely floored me.
It's like the Dali of architects.
Yeah. So, like sometimes tourist things, or like I went and saw Mount Rushmore one time, and it's like, okay, like it's cool.
Yeah, but it's exactly what I thought it would be.
Yeah. You go and see a Gaudi work, and it is a million times more special there. And the cool thing with him, he was a very, very devout Catholic, very spiritual. And his thing was that God made perfect design in nature. So in all of his buildings, he just tried to mirror the already existing patterns in nature. And so you like walk through, and like the door handle is shaped like a leaf, and like the ceiling is shaped like the seafloor, and it just has such a organic feeling. Like the building feels like you're outside, but you're inside.
Right.
Wow, crazy.
That's cool.
So anyways, the Musician's Compass, I tried to just follow like these pre-existing patterns in nature, like these 12 steps that happen every day on tour, and then the music follows like the circle of fifths, and
yeah, that's awesome.
So it's like this really nerdy, like really precious stuff to me, but it's absolutely like it's not accessible for a lot of people. Like I don't care about like, hey, look under the hood of my car. It's like, does it go fast? That's all I want to know.
Right.
I don't know about that stuff. I don't care.
Right.
Yeah.
So this project's like the same thing, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's good to know, because when I read it now, I'm gonna have that background. Like, I don't know if you explain it in the preface or like in the author's note to the book or whatever. Do you explain that about the book, so a reader can have like that context?
I do. There is a music lesson in the back.
Nice.
There's a little appendix that explains the way the songs are written.
Cool.
Yeah,
it's fucking dope,
I love teaching music when I can, and
you got into pedals for this.
I
did, man.
Dude, I wish we could have read it beforehand, but it's also kind of nice that we haven't read it yet, because I'm actually like curious about how the actual structure of the book is. Like, is it written in the first person? Is there a character?
Yeah, what's the character's name?
Like, give us the synopsis.
Okay, so the story is about this folk punk band from Cranbrook, BC.
Cool.
They're called North by Choice. They're a 4-piece.
This is all fiction.
All fiction. Yeah. So there's 4-piece folk punk band from Cranbrook, BC, and the characters are Devin, who's the bass player, Rat, who's the guitar player / banjo player, Joey, who's the lead singer, and Mikey, who's the drummer. Cool. And the story is told first person from Devin's point of view, the bass player.
Okay.
Yeah, so the bass player's telling it, and
Okay.
the story starts like pretty much on stage on a Saturday night in Berlin, sold out
Cool.
room,
Yeah.
and it's a big party. And then the story lasts 24 hours and ends when the show's just about to start the next night in a small town on a Sunday night.
Cool.
And
So the whole book
That's
is
so
24 hours?
yeah, and it
Love
goes
that.
and each chapter is one of the phases.
No way.
That's
I
so
love
cool.
it.
Like
Can't
the
wait.
phases that guy said.
Yeah.
You were in
Can't
phase
wait.
4.
Yeah, exactly.
So why
yeah.
did you decide to tell it from the point of view of the bass player?
It must have been pretty easy to write too. I mean, like compared to your first novel, because you're literally writing everything. Like everything that you would do
Yeah.
in 24 hours
Yeah.
is going on paper.
I wrote a lot of it on the road, and
Yeah,
so like
yeah.
I feel like there's so many little details in the story that are super authentic. Yo, Teed, I'll grab one of those. Thanks, brother. Because
good.
I'd be sitting there typing away on my computer, and then I'd just look around me and be like, oh, this should be in the story, you know, because that's
Yeah,
what
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
That's the coolest thing, man. You you could literally put everything in
Because
there.
you're like
Yeah.
living it at the moment.
Crack a beer, you can write about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, back to my question of like why you chose the bass player. Like, you know what? Because like in my mind, it's like the bass player is kind of the least interesting person
Hey, take
of
it
every
easy.
band.
Take it easy. Take
Oh,
it
yeah,
easy.
Teed's a bass player.
It probably had something to do with you playing
You
bass
playing
in the band?
bass.
Yeah, so I at the time, like my main gigs were playing bass with Andinos and then
Yeah.
playing cello with the Dead South, and that was my perspective of the band. And like, so the story talks about the highs and the lows of being a touring musician, and so one of the like subtexts talks a lot about mental health, and just like how you have these amazing, surreal, best moment of your life moments, and then you have these like crushing lows where you're like you're hungover and you realize you don't live anywhere and you're broke and like I don't have a future and like all this stuff
And you're eating McDonald's.
and you're eating
And
awful.
you're awful. You literally haven't had a vegetable in a week. And
That
you're
would, that would
dying.
be so hard. Like even like experiencing the ultimate high, like just living through life, like how can you get higher than that experience of performing? You can't.
And so like seeing this 24-hour cycle happen, like I'm a really like observant. I just love watching people and just like I would notice how in myself and in the people around me, like performing on stage is like this crazy drug. You're not putting anything in
For
your body.
sure.
You're not injecting anything, but
It's a euphoria.
It's a
like,
euphoria.
A real euphoria.
Yeah,
Like
and you
it
can-
feels like a drug.
you
It's
can just
seriously a
be so,
drug.
You can be so bummed out. Then you hit the stage. Then afterwards, you're like, yeah, let's. And then you're feeling so high, and then it's like 1 a.m. What are you gonna do? So that's when you have, and it's like
That's the crash.
it made sense why every rock and roll documentary is like why
Ends in
bands-
chaos.
It's because performing on stage is.
It's literally like heroin, dude. It's the same circle of life as
Man.
heroin.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you're up here, everything is the best it's ever been, and then you go back to reality where it's just you never get that high.
For me, it was like seeing 1,000 people sing a song that I wrote in my bedroom.
Yeah.
Like, there is no better drug. Like, and then you get off stage, you start drinking beers, you start doing all that, and you wake up the next morning and you're like,
You're just a person.
you're just
You're
like,
not
okay,
a fucking rock
so,
star musician.
Like, what now? So yeah, I get it. So you performed on stage. That's what this book is loosely based off.
I can't wait to
touring.
read it, man.
Yeah.
And the touring life. So what happens? Like, so now you've been on stage. What happens with the mental health stuff?
Right.
So I know this book is about the highs and lows of touring. So
Yeah.
so let's skip to the low after the performance. What was that?
So, and this is why, like, it's a fictional story because I wanted to write the most impactful story that like really drove the main sentiments home in like the most effective amount of time.
Right.
Well aware that people have like a million other things they could be watching and we have short attention spans and all that.
Yeah, yeah.
So I wanted to make like a story that read it in one sitting, you're entertained, but you learn a ton.
Yeah,
that was like my
sure.
goal.
For sure.
And so
that's why short stories are so profound too.
Yeah,
I find you read like an amazing short story by Hemingway or Carver, like you literally read 5 pages and you're like, that was way better than a fucking novel. But yeah, so you packed it all into this book right here that we have for all the let's see how many pages we have here. 131 pages for all of the listeners out there that like to read a good novella. So you packed it all in one.
So you chose to do fiction because you would be able to sort of embellish. Because if you just did it subjectively, sometimes it's like, you know, when a comedian tells a joke or something, they have to almost embellish certain parts for the joke.
Yeah.
Is that kind of the mentality when you're writing the book? Like, it has to be fiction because you can kind of hyperbolize these main points that you want to drive home, that you see the musicians around you and yourself.
Yeah, like there's the 12 steps, and maybe during the course of a tour, I would have like a real unique thing happen once a day in a different phase.
Right.
And I wanted to have like one 24-hour period where the classic thing happened
in every
row.
phase. Right.
And the other
That's
big thing
cool.
was I really struggle with the line of where my personal life ends and where what I feel safe sharing with the public.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to like, I've had some really close friends have some really bad mental health issues on the road. And,
For sure.
And like, that's not my story to tell.
Mm-hmm.
And so by fictionalizing, it's like, I can share
Cool.
the
Still
sentiments.
share it, right.
I can share the sentiments without like, you know, like it's not my job to air people's laundry,
Right.
you know?
But did
So-
you draw, like, did you have to gain insight directly with the people that, I guess, experience, let's say, mental health issues on the road? Like, did you have to, like, I guess, prod and pry and poke at them and question them about,
was
you know,
there
what it was
research involved?
like? You know, like, do you know what I'm trying to say?
A little bit of research probably.
It was purely observational and also
Okay.
just,
Love
like,
it.
Cool.
And also like there's 4 guys in the band, and each guy in the band represents like a different element of my own self.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
So for instance, Rat, the guitar player, he's in it because he loves art. That's the only reason he's there. Mikey, the drummer, he's there because he loves to party. Joey is there because he likes to be with his friends.
Yeah.
And then Devin's there. He like the guy who's telling the story. He's the hedonist. He loves doing the drugs and he loves chasing women. So everybody is there chasing their own high.
Right.
And like, I'm good, man.
You're good.
And I found that like I am a little bit of each of one of those guys in some way. And so in writing the story, it's like I have a chance to really make a point by embellishing each one of the
Right.
characters.
Yeah,
Just
sure.
going off with like all these different things. That's super cool, man. That would be
sounds
so,
silly, man. I'm
that
so
sounds
pumped
like
to
the
read it.
funnest book ever to write.
Yeah.
Like how do you manage to stay on track so that it's, you know, compressed into 131 pages? Like how, I feel like with all
Editing.
of those characters, like just character development, I could write 131 pages on each band member.
Yeah. I wrote this thing and like it ended up being like maybe 25,000 words, and I probably wrote like 100. But you know, the 75,000 words that got chopped like they were unnecessary and they weren't good. So we were talking about killing your darlings earlier, and that like writing a story is not even half the battle. It's paring it down and just like you're like a sculptor. You have like all of this shit. You just gotta like leave only what's necessary.
What's
and
important.
kind of reflects my like life philosophy. Like you only need what you absolutely need.
Yeah.
And I wasn't gonna waste a reader's time of like 3 pages of me describing the clouds,
fill
which
in
is cool to
things.
do.
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
cool,
but it's
for
like,
sure.
that's not
So
what I was
you
going
were
for.
more
That's
open
cool.
this novel to the editing process, would you say? Were you or to giving to surrendering to a little bit of editing, to a little bit of I guess, surrendering to more collaboration, to more constructive criticism, to more, okay, yeah. No, you're right. I don't need that sentence. Yeah, no, I don't need to record that riff there.
Yeah.
You're totally, so were you more able to surrender and enjoy the collaboration process during this?
I would say the biggest part of surrender and all of that was in between releasing I'm Free and starting this one was I did a lot of research. Like I read a lot of books by writers on writing.
Cool.
And it was really humbling. It's like, oh, I can't believe I didn't think of that, or I didn't see it that way. And
did you read Stephen King's On Writing?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. Hey, yeah. I read that. Yeah. Love it. It's amazing.
Yeah, I read that book the same week I was in Barcelona actually checking out Gaudi. It was
nice.
It was one of the most like intense artistic downloads of my life.
Yeah.
But I read that. I've read all of Stephen Pressfield's stuff, like his self-help stuff, or his nonfiction stuff. Like there's this book called Nobody Wants to Read Your Shit, and it talks about how if you're writing a story, whether it's fiction, nonfiction, if you're giving a talk, like it has to follow this formula. Yeah. It's got to follow this formula. It's just how humans are designed. Right. And it really kickstarted this like journey into the human unconscious and like how people are programmed and how they like to hear stories.
Yeah.
And so it's like once you understand what a story needs, then it's just like finding creative ways to have the story go along with that.
With the
for sure.
And so like I just thought the first story I just sat down and like, well, let's write a story. What do you have to do? Just fucking do a story. Yeah. So that was like the biggest humbling was like, holy fuck, like I don't know anything about writing a story.
But it's kind of cool that like through doing your research, it's cool first of all that you did the research, but through doing that research, reading these books of other writers, you kind of learned that like this is how you tell a story, this is the climax, this is whatever you need for a story. And it probably made it easier for you to actually axe those 75,000 words.
Absolutely, man.
Like it was just like, yeah, this is great. Like I love the writing in it, but it doesn't have anything to do with the story. Like we don't need it.
That's why I'm not necessarily a fan of like posthumous novels, because they're always coming out when an author dies. Yeah. They always release like novels posthumously, and I'm always just like, that's like I get it, but like that's not the way it should have been. So I always struggle with like reading novels from like authors who have passed on, you know. It's just crazy.
So then like so you wrote this second book. I'm kind of curious, like kind of getting away from the books and the writing and the touring, like I'm kind of curious about your minimalist life.
Right.
And just like
let's talk about
have
that.
you always been sort of this minimalist mentality, or have you, I guess, has it like developed over time?
I've always been, but it's one of those things that you can get better at. It's a daily practice. Is
it a conscious effort on your behalf? Like, do you have to like work at it, or is it just kind of like in your inherent nature?
It's for sure both. Like,
it's both.
I grew up, my grandparents, you know, lived through the war in Europe and moved to Canada in the early 50s. And, you know, my grandma was the classic, like the story with her is one time she made a bunch of bread that didn't turn out, it didn't rise, but like didn't want to throw it away. So like the kids had to eat that bread.
The shitty bread.
And it's because if you live through a period of tremendous scarcity, you just appreciate stuff so much.
Right.
And those values were taught to me, like just don't waste things. And I think every kid, not every kid, but a lot of people grow up experiencing that. And the big kicker for me was when I was 13 or 14, however old I was, with my first dishwashing job. And like every hour I spent was worth $6.65.
Mm-hmm.
And like doing dishes sucked.
Yeah,
it was so hard. It was like the hardest thing. I can't believe that little kids are dishwashers. It's a hard job, man.
It is a hard job. I know.
So minimum wage at the time was $6.65, and so like
that's crazy. I was such a stingy, cheap
guy for, I kind of still am, just because of, because I was ingrained like the value of my time.
Right.
And like younger me sacrificed like those Saturdays in the sun on the beach with my pals because I was doing dishes to make money. And now that I have that dough, and so like, that's kind of where it started. And now really being in a phase of prioritizing like travel, and focusing on art. I can't have any little time vampires in my life. So if I have like big phone bills or, you know, if I'm spending a bunch of money on like clothes or whatever, every dollar that's going out and not into my art is like, it has to be made up somewhere.
Somehow.
And,
so a lot of
but
value,
like, don't you,
so a lot of Value Village.
Don't you, but dude, don't you have like wants outside of your artistry? Like for me, fuck, it sucks for me because my artistry is photography, and like it's the most expensive fucking hobby of all time. Like you just never make money in photography. But like
because you're buying so much.
Because it's just like a camera costs $5,000 just for the body. Then you got to buy the lens, and you got to buy the memory. Like for me, it's kind of almost like a form of self-indulgence because I love cameras.
Yeah.
I love to spend all my money on it. It's not minimalist though. Like, do you know what I mean? Whereas I think maybe with other arts like writing or music, like don't you have a human desire to just buy other things that you like outside of your artistry? Like with cameras, for me, that's what I like. Like, so that's what I spend my money on. But with writing a book, it's like, okay, obviously you want to put your money there, but like, what about just living your life? Like, do you need a car?
Yeah,
I mean,
you can't live in Saskatchewan without having a safe car. Yeah. So obviously that's something you need to
unless you're a roommate Jeff, but like
but
specimen.
Listeners kind of know Jeff.
but like really though, I'm actually genuinely curious. Like if I don't know, how do you not have wants, dude?
Aren't there some days where you wake up and you're like, I'm going to spend $300 on that. I don't give a shit. I want it.
No, never.
That's great,
man. It's like,
that's how I live, man.
It's one of those things that, okay. So for example, I got really into winter biking. I find these ways to like not spend money, but also like make my life better.
Yeah.
And it's like, it takes a long time to find the thing. You have to like, it's a constant practice of trying to fulfill these life's needs. So I got really into winter biking, and like, I used to hate winter, but now I don't love winter, but I like it a lot more because I have this thing that I get to do as part of adventure.
Right.
Getting from point A to point B, like, used to be the worst thing. And now it's like, I put on all my shit and
what
I
do
get
you
on my
mean?
mountain bike.
Wait, what's winter biking? The fuck is winter
Big
biking,
tires.
dude?
So I have the bike I rode here, my mountain bike.
Yeah.
Brandon gave me some studded tires. So it's my classic mountain bike I bought when I was 15.
Yeah.
Throw on some studded tires. I put on my snowboard helmet with goggles, winter jacket, and I bike everywhere all winter.
Dude, you're the weird guy I always see around town.
Dude, you bike in the winter?
Man, and I used to drive around.
Dude, I see you all the time. That's you?
Yeah, oh my! I'm one of them. There's like 10 in the city.
That is
That's
insane.
awesome, man.
And I used to drive around, and I'd be like driving home from work, and I'd see this guy biking by me, and I go, "What a crazy person!"
Dude, I see that. I'm just like, what are they doing?
But man, you guys, you got to try it.
Oh, for
I better
sure.
be sweet. I'd probably like it.
Just like leaving a party at like midnight or 1 a.m.
And just always having a ride.
having your bike there, and then like driving through Regina in the middle of January when it's dark
When
and
the
there's
city's
no cars
calm.
out. You have the city to yourself.
Yeah.
And it's just
crazy.
just magic. It's so
Dude.
See, like I had a similar experience when I lived in Chile because it never snowed. So it was never winter biking. It was always summer biking. But like my bike was my mode of transportation. So I had a similar experience where you'd bike home at like 3 a.m. City's dead. It's like, wow, this city was built for me type of feeling.
Yeah.
Wow,
but like,
that's
okay. So going back to minimalism and winter biking, like, how did you get on that train of thought?
So it was just it was something like some friends of mine when they left town, they like gave me their old winter bike, and I was like, oh yeah, thank you, I'll try it out. And it didn't really stick. And then Brandon, my good pal, he his car got totaled, and so he's like, you know what, I'm just gonna try riding my bike this winter instead of getting a new car. And he just did a full winter on it, And it was really inspirational because he was looking great. He's looking trim.
Yeah, I always see him because I work right close to him. So yeah.
Yeah, and he was just telling me like how much he was enjoying the adventure of it, and I tried it once, and it's like, oh, like I love biking in the summer. Why does that have to limit me?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Why does that have to limit me? So that's just one like small
example.
So are there days
example.
you get up and you're like, I wish I didn't have to bike right now. It's like, fuck, can't I just like get in a heated car?
Yeah.
Do you have the conversation in your head with like your wants versus your needs? Like, do you have to have that conversation at this point in your life, or do you kind of just inherently know yourself and you just know what you need and you don't really crave what you want?
I am very, very conscious of my needs. I think about needs a lot, and I think about the needs of the people around me a lot. Shout out to Marshall Rosenberg, Nonviolent Communication, one of the best books of all time.
Love it.
What's it called?
Nonviolent Communication. And so I think about needs a lot, and I do spend a lot of time at, like, I'm pretty self-indulgent of thinking about what needs are important. Like, one of the things I'm thinking about now, for example, is like my needs for like play and human connection. Having this job where I go and I spend 8 hours a day by myself writing, I sometimes come home and it's like, I didn't play today.
Yeah.
And I didn't like kick it with any pals.
Yeah, you're not like gaining life experience. So how can you put that into your writing or your work?
So like for something like that, like what I've been doing now is calling up pals just to like play guitar together, or trying to plan meals with people, like anyone else who works downtown, like let's meet up and have a coffee. And so right away it's like slipping in that need. And I think that once you can find like this holistic way to meet your most pressing needs, the desire to have like some of the things that fill the place of needs is lessened.
Oh, for sure.
Like some people who, for instance, like have really stressful jobs, they need to buy the expensive car to like
validate their shitty job
or
their stressful job.
Yeah, because 100%. They don't have enough time for maybe take care of themselves in other ways. And like buying
that
the
makes
thing
sense.
like fulfills it. So I think that if you have a really if you're really in tune with like what your basic needs are, a lot of them can be met without money.
Oh, right, for sure.
So
what are your like top 5 basic needs?
Can I play not really devil's advocate, but totally understand that a lot of your needs can be met that way by just, being in tune. Do you ever think like sometimes privilege plays into that a bit? Being a straight white male, being able to get up and be like, I don't need that. But like, do you know where I'm getting at all?
I think that it would play the opposite though, wouldn't it? Like if you're a straight white male and you have all this privilege, then fucking if you want to buy that fancy car or the even small like a nice laptop.
I guess I just mean living minimalist in a way that's acceptable to society.
Yeah.
Do you ever, well, obviously you check your privilege. You say, I know you do.
Yep.
I know who you are. You're very about that. Do you sometimes sit back and realize like, fuck, I got it good. Like I can live this transient minimalist lifestyle and not be judged.
Yeah. So an interesting thing for me, a couple years ago, I remember the moment where something changed in me. And I was like a pretty devout vegan for a long time. And one of the main reasons why I was for like the sake of the planet. There's all this literature out there that like if we ate less meat,
less methane,
all that stuff. And so that was a big part of it for me.
Save the trees.
And I was like making a personal sacrifice because I liked meat, but I was doing my part.
Right.
And I felt good about it. But I was pretty consistently running into some like health issues, like just low energy, and I was actually becoming pre-diabetic.
Crazy.
And I remember
Beers for the boys. Sorry.
I'm good, man. Listening to it was one of the Bill Burr comedy specials where he's like,
my faves,
one of his opening jokes was something to the effect of like, you know what no politician's ever going to talk about is like overpopulation.
Yeah, that's his
And
classic.
something switched for me in that moment where it's like, there's something about my physiology that craves meat, and I've since become a meat eater, and like I feel so much better,
Dude.
so much better. And that's just me. I'm not saying that's for everyone, but that's for me.
Me too.
And
sure.
but there was this acceptance of like, of who I am, and there's a lot of like social justice movements right now, and I think the world is moving absolutely in the right direction. But I was taking on so much guilt. We could talk.
Okay,
that's another
another thing.
podcast.
Another
That's a
podcast.
totally
Okay,
other
okay.
But
podcast.
I was like I was like self-sacrificing so much and feeling like I had this obligation.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden I realized too that like, wait a minute, I can't help who I was born as.
Right.
And I'm not doing the world any favors if I'm not enjoying and being the best version of myself.
Of course.
I had
That's
that
a great-
exact same
that's a great-
revelation
It's a
with,
great way to view it, man.
with
Yeah.
the exact same situation. I was vegetarian for 2.5 years, and I had that exact same revelation, man. Like, I started eating meat. I felt amazing, and it's like, okay, well, I'm not a vegetarian. I wasn't meant to be a vegetarian. So then when you realize that, how did that, I guess,
Yeah, you're so...
how did that inform the rest of your life as a minimalist?
So I think my philosophy of living now is like, when you're dead forever.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so you have one chance at this.
Yeah.
It's
And
fleeting, man.
It's fleeting. And so I think that you can spend your life trying to deny who you are and feeling guilty about it.
For sure.
Or you can be fucking grateful for it.
Yeah.
And like my way of honoring the privilege I've been born into is like making every minute count and making the best art I can, and like
And still being aware.
and still being
Of,
aware.
of the marginalization and the oppression.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you don't necessarily have to deny who you are
No.
to be completely aware of what's going on outside. And you don't have to be successful or to do things. Really, it doesn't have to coincide or relate to you being white and straight. You know, it's just like, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
Do you really think, though, that your privilege and being a straight white male has much to really, like, why does that have to matter to you wanting to have a minimalist perspective on life?
I think me being white and being a man and being straight has nothing to do with my minimalism.
Yeah, that's how I feel
cool.
too. I feel like as straight white males, we feel the need to address that we have this privilege, and then we have this, like, upper hand just right off the bat, and it is true. But we're aware of that. Like, we're lucky that we're aware of that. There's a lot of people that aren't aware of that. But I also think that, like, if you're trying to be a minimalist, I don't think it has anything to do with you being a straight white male. It's like, and back to my original question, was like, are you trying to be a minimalist, or is that just your nature?
It's my nature. I think like to have the choice to live with less, of course, comes from a place of privilege.
Of course,
not everyone has
for
that
sure.
choice.
So true.
Because some people, I mean, are born with
Yeah,
nothing.
some people were born into having less, and that is a great point.
Right.
Yeah.
So that I have to say that's part of privilege, but objectively, like if I could live any way today, if I could live in a mansion in LA and have 5 cars and all this stuff, I still wouldn't take it. There's an efficiency in the way that I live. Like, for instance, and this is kind of like undertone in the musician's compass, but I don't ever want to make art for the drive of getting validation from others. And I don't, like, when you have a garden and you grow the plant and then you eat it, it's like the growing of it is such a reward in itself. The eating of it is such a reward in itself. Like, so many aspects of minimalism is a reward in and of itself.
Yeah.
And that fuels the like lack of having a lot of the other comforts.
Yeah.
And so it's in some ways a self-sustaining way of life. It's hard to describe really.
No,
I don't know if that makes any sense.
Doesn't validation feel so good though? Because
honestly, man,
I struggle with this too. Like with my photography again. That's the only way I can relate to you, by the way. No, but like,
you're a musician too.
But yeah,
right.
but like through my photography, like I'm the exact same as you. I don't do anything for the approval of others.
Yeah.
But when I get approval of others, it feels fucking pretty nice.
Amazing.
Yeah.
But
so what's that line like? Like,
no, there's
how's that line for you? Like, because when something feels great, when someone tells you they love your book, doesn't it make you want more people to tell you that?
Absolutely, yeah. But
it's a good question.
It's a great question, man. And it's the most human of responses.
Totally.
And I think that that was one of the huge epiphanies in writing this story was like the drugs, the womanizing, whatever. It's like there's social media, there's millions of addictions we can have. And validation is something we don't talk about as much, but like there's so many people who are like addicted to it.
Oh, of course.
And
especially today, bro.
I noticed myself like changing the behavior or the patterns of my day to somehow get validation. And it's like in the same way that no addiction leads to true happiness.
Right.
I was becoming aware that validation, it's like other people thinking you're cool doesn't mean that you actually
are cool.
Feel yourself inside cool. So like I wanted to be like the warrior who was like, who could thrive without that. And so that was like a self challenge to me.
That's super cool.
And then like once you have that intention, you kind of see all of the ways it's like, wait a minute, I'm not going to say this to that person just to like have them like me.
Yeah.
Cause that's not authentic. And
Surely.
and I have a pattern of like, it's classic. Like if you're shy or you want to fit in, like I'm such a chameleon. Like I spent so many of my years not being authentic and trying to fit in and changing who I was. And it's same, like just,
you think that comes with age then?
Yeah.
I never knew
age,
that.
Does it come with, wait.
Yeah.
Does it come with age or does it come with experience? Both.
Yeah.
Because like there's people, myself I think, and I probably think you, who live a lot in a little bit of time. Like I'm lucky enough where I've had these crazy, like when I write my life down on paper, it's fucking insane. Like it always blows my mind. And like, I'm not that old.
Yeah.
But I feel old. And I feel like a lot of the way that I feel comes from experience rather than age. But I know that some people would say that it just comes with age. Like you develop your self-confidence, you develop the less of a need to be validated as you get older. But I think that you develop it as you have more experiences in life. I guess you could say it's both, but for you.
Yeah, I think that without a question, they're like the biological and physiological changes that happen as you go on have something to say about it, but I think experience is probably the leading cause.
Yeah, the biggest thing.
I find that like, because I have been trying to practice minimalism over the last couple of years, and sometimes sometimes Frank makes fun of me, sometimes people make fun of me.
Yeah,
because I'll make fun of you.
Because like I
make fun of you for everything else.
Because like I have a 15-inch TV in my room. Like,
nice. Dude, it's stupid though. That's dumb. Yeah, you could just buy a laptop and have a bigger TV.
See, but that's
dude, literally though.
But the thing is that I got that for $15.
Right.
It's like, so I could buy a laptop for $200.
Dude, have you seen it? It is fucking
the
dumbest thing.
So I practice it.
Sense.
Like I literally don't spend my money on useless things. I just don't.
I disagree. I think you go out sometimes and you spend a bunch of money.
Oh yeah, we're talking, but I'm still getting like social, and I'm still benefiting me in socially. You know,
you're definitely more. You live a more minimalistic life than me.
Yeah, for sure. Like when we were getting this house, like, we had the opportunity to get a bigger place, but I was just like, yeah, we don't need it. You know, sometimes you just don't need shit, and you just have to like realize that. You know, I don't need that.
See,
I don't need
and
that
I
extra
come
room.
from the camp where sometimes you just want it. You know,
I get it.
Sometimes you just want it. Like for me, with my camera shit, I do not need some of the cameras that I have. Like I don't. Like I could make the same amount of money in my business having way shittier cameras, but I want it, and I feel like it's worth it to splurge extra.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because like you guys definitely are way more minimalistic than me, but like for the things that I love and the things that I want, I am actually willing to sort of invest, or however you want to look at it, in those things.
And I think it's totally fine. It's all about a balance. Yeah. And I lived a period of my life where like I had my own house and I had cash flow, and then a period of my life where I didn't have those things and was sleeping on my brother's couch.
Were there differences for you?
Oh, absolutely. Like I was way less comfortable and probably like way more miserable all the time because I didn't have as much alone time. And
for sure.
And it's just so nice to have like your clothes hanging up somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think that if I could give any advice to any young folks out there, would be
for all of our 12 listeners.
it would be like, have a period of your life where you're buying dumb shit like champagne for your friends at the bar. Like do that, and then have a period of your life where you like eat rice and beans and live in a cellar basement. Like experience both, because there's a richness in life in both of them.
And then once your perspective.
Yeah, and once you've had both, then like it's okay to like buy yourself nice stuff. Like you shouldn't feel guilty about it, but just like find the balance.
Keep it in check. Yeah. Like
it's
funny. Sorry, dude.
No, that's great.
It's funny that you say that because, like this past year, 2018, I made the most money I've ever made in my life.
Yeah.
I worked the most in my life, and I was sort of the most unhappy that I've ever been in my life. Mm-hmm. But I had flow. I could fucking go out, buy all my friends shots. We could all have a good time, like, but it didn't fulfill me in the way that you would, I guess, project that it would.
Yeah.
And then this year, and even when I lived in Chile, which I made fucking nothing in Chile, those years really informed that year for me, was that like you can go from having nothing and you can make a lot of money, but really there is no difference in like how you feel.
Yeah.
Like there isn't. As long as your basic needs are met, as long as you can afford food, as long as you can afford some kind of shelter. Yeah, it's nice to have alone time. It's great.
Yeah.
I before I lived with Teed and Jeff, I had a house and I was alone all the time, and it was fucking amazing. But like I live with them now, and I'm still grateful that I have shelter. Yeah. I'm still grateful that all my basic needs are met. And the money factor, like you make more, you spend more. The difference in between is kind of the same no matter what level of the spectrum you are. You really need kind of to have that perspective of you're down here sometimes, maybe one year you're up here, and now you kind of can gauge like, I guess, your own personal needs.
You know what? It's cool to think about that, because now being 31 and having a career and having a life, you get a lot of people, like I know that I get a lot of people that come to me and be like, so like, what are you doing? Like, you gonna buy a house? You gonna like
get married, have kids? And like, some people that I know, and specifically in my family, are always like, you know, how come you're still living with roommates? Like, how come you're still... And I'm just like, because I don't need to spend more money on a mortgage. Mm-hmm. Like, I literally can live with roommates and spend pretty much nothing. Like, I live with Frank, I live with Jeff, and I spend nothing to live here. I spend $480 to live here, whereas if I had a mortgage in a house
and you know what it's like.
Yeah.
Mortgage and a house and all that responsibility is good, and I get it, and that's cool.
Stress.
And that's good, but I
Stress.
don't need that in my life right now.
Yeah.
I don't need to go get a mortgage or get a condo because it's the thing to do.
It's
When
funny
you're
because
30.
it's
I don't
funny,
need to do
but
that.
that's funny because like people would assume that you can't. They're like, oh, he must not be successful enough where he can buy a house.
Yeah.
Whereas that's kind of the wrong thing to assume. You know, like sometimes people like you or Tony or me do things because it makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not a fact of whether you can or can't. It's just like it makes sense at this time in my life to not buy a house.
Yeah.
Because that's what everyone says I should do.
Sure, I could go buy a condo. I could use some money that I have tucked away, or I could use that money to travel.
Hookers and blow.
Or I could use that money to travel somewhere. Like Frank's going to Beijing next year. I'm going to use that fucking money to go to Beijing and visit him. I'm not going to buy a house and lose all my money. Like I find that I get more satisfaction in experience rather than material needs.
And I think that you're lucky though that you are aware of that, because there's a lot of people who think that their happiness is rooted in things, and like it feels kind of dumb for me to say this because I have a lot of things, but I also know that my priorities are rooted in experiences.
Yeah.
Like I know that all the best moments in my life have happened through the experiences that I've had and not through fucking having all these like lavish things.
Yeah. 100%. And I know we got off topic with the book, but minimalist is kind of where you're at, Eric. It's kind of who you are. I mean, I've known you for years. I've never known you as the guy that's going to go buy a brand new pair of Nike shoes. You're the guy that is like, I don't need that shit. And you know, I think that that's why we kind of wanted you on this. We wanted to know how you went from this guy who made really good money, probably 6 figures a year. I don't know how much you made, to realizing that you don't need to do that to be happy. Like, that's not who you are.
I also think that it's like a struggle that everyone kind of is confronted with at some point in their life of like, am I happy where I am? And like, should I take a risk to change it to hopefully find the happiness that I'm looking for, or should I sit comfortably making money, doing kind of what the status quo expects me to do? And I think that that's like a really cool thing that you did, was you chose to kind of follow this path that most people don't. Like I struggle with it all the time. Sometimes I just want to quit everything and do photography and podcasting for the rest of my life, whether I make money or not. But I'm too scared at this point. And I say that it like doesn't make sense or whatever, but I think at the end of the day, it comes down to like fear.
And I think that it's movies and all that shit glamorize doing a 180, changing your life, and I think it's cool that you write about how it's not glamorous in some ways.
For sure.
It's difficult to do a 180, and it's not easy. And because I'm on the road and touring and making art, I might seem like it's great, but it's fucking hard. Like you are waking up. You're like, I mean, tour life is hard. Yeah, and you wrote about that in your new book, and wrote about the grind of life now. And it doesn't really matter what you're doing. Everything's a fucking grind. Yeah. It's the fucking world we live in, man. Everything's a grind.
Yeah. Throughout this like whole experience, this fucking crazy journey of you going from this corporate blue collar dude to sort of this self-fulfilling destiny, what is like the main kind of thing you've learned, and then what is the kind of advice you would give from someone, I guess, contemplating just fucking cutting their losses and going for it?
First thing that comes to mind, because I have learned so much. Like I could, oh my God.
The mecca though. The main thing that you would just fucking...
Okay, the main thing, the first thing that came to mind is that like, no matter what you're doing, no matter what job you have, no matter where you're living, what house you live in, it's like whatever you're envisioning that will make your life better, doing this or doing that, I hear people all the time like, I think I'm leaving my job. I hear the conversation all the time.
Yeah.
But know that it's not going to make your life better. The changing your external environment is not going to directly result in a change in your internal environment.
I fucking completely agree,
awesome.
dude. You know about that when you tried to move to Vancouver.
Of course. Honestly, and I hate to sound cliche, but Hemingway has this quote that says, you're not going to get away from yourself from moving from one place to another.
Yeah, it's true.
And it's like one of the most true quotes. Like, you just aren't.
That being said, though, I feel like a change in environment or a changing perspective can help you make the internal change.
Yeah, so, or help you see things a little clearer. But you're 100% nail on the head. Like, it just, no matter where you are, whether or not you're happy depends on you and not your environment. It depends on your own, whatever you're doing in life, whatever you think that you need.
So if we have a listener right now who's in a dead end job, they're unhappy, they're thinking like, holy fuck, what am I doing? Your advice is, if you do a 180, it's not necessarily going to make you happier.
It could actually make your life way worse.
Mm-hmm. So what do you say to them then? Like, do you say go for it? Or do you say have a plan?
It fully depends on who you are. For me, when I was leaving my job, I knew I had these underfulfilled needs for adventure. Mm-hmm. And if I didn't fulfill those, then I would have suffered. Mm-hmm. And so I had sort of like overmet my needs for like physical safety. Yeah. And I had undermet my needs. So I was like, I went from like one extreme to the other. Now my goal is like, okay, I'm trying, like, the next thing I do, I want it to make some money. Yeah. And I also want to be able to have, like, some adventure. And so, but I've also learned the ways to have those needs met now. Right. Through my experience of trying both. Mm-hmm. So, like, experience
it's part of the process,
experience is deadly for that. So, yeah.
But, again, would you say to me contemplating on quitting my whole life for photography, what would you say to me?
I would want to know what it is that what are you looking for?
Oh,
yeah, that's fair.
Very true.
What I am looking for would be something like, I guess the ability to obviously meet my personal needs as a human being surviving in the world.
So make a few bucks.
Make a few bucks, but not over, like, it's not about money, it's make enough bucks.
Right? Sure, make enough bucks.
And to wake up every day feeling like I have my own agency to be the human that I want to be, and not have some type of influence from anything external, whether it's a boss, whether it's a status quo or anything. Like, to be able to just wake up, be me, do me, and eat.
Yeah. Well, I think that...
Should I quit my job, dude?
It sounds like you already have that figured out.
Sounds like you got a plan.
And have real meaningful life experiences. Like,
you know,
traveling is one thing. Like, me and you have both traveled. Traveling is great, and it gives you that crazy perspective on life that a lot of people in Saskatchewan don't have. But even just a normal life experience, like even getting to go to a coffee shop and having like an interaction with somebody that is profound in some way.
Of course.
So I have a mentor. I think, okay, first of all, I'm going to back up for 1 second and say that
do it, man.
I recommend this for any young man. And I say young man because us gentlemen we have sometimes a hard time talking to one another, especially about emotional things. It's harder for dudes.
Yeah, to be vulnerable and we have egos.
And I'm going through a big process of change. I don't know what my next thing is. Mm-hmm. And so over the years, I've collected like a group of older guys who I call for just like wisdom.
Yeah.
And sometimes they have the answer, but sometimes they don't. But like, it just is such a, here's another minimalist thing. Like, it doesn't cost you anything to call up. And a lot of these old guys, like, I call them old. They're not all like ancient, but they're older than me.
Right.
I call up some of these old guys.
Well,
and
it does cost you something to call someone up.
Like, phone
I pay for data.
Right.
Sorry, I had to say it.
But like, it doesn't like, and most of the time they're honored or happy to share their knowledge,
sure.
you know. And like, I hope one day some young man's gonna like call me up and ask me shit. Like, and so, anyways, I have this mentor, and he has this house in small town Saskatchewan. He bought an old post office. Yeah. And over the past 5 or 6 years, through like collecting recycled materials, has built this absolutely stunning off-grid house. He's a master builder.
Wow.
And so what his game plan was to go like into the system and for like dedicate like a decade or like 5 to 10 years of just like being a part of the system and just like hoarding away dough till one day he could go buy this place that would live like outside of the system, because his version of paradise was being able to wake up and work on what he wanted to. And like, if he didn't want to work, he wouldn't have to. And one of my favorite things he said, he's like, you don't realize the luxury of being able to take a shit whenever you want to. Because sometimes you have those jobs where you can't. Right. And that's like, of course. That's messed. Like,
man, that's a
luxury.
Up.
Yeah, it's a luxury.
Like, you have to time a shit.
We take a lot for granted in this
like, why do I have to time a shit?
Yeah,
like it's hard to do, man.
Of course, man. Like, I should be able to, like, fuck. I have to release the bowels. Yeah. I don't want to time that.
So I think starting with the end in mind, like knowing what you want your day to look like, all of a sudden gives work meaning. And that's what I lacked before. Was I was going to work and making money, but I didn't have anything I wanted to spend it on. It had no perspective. And we're like the first generation ever who are facing some of these questions. Like, for however long humans have existed for, fundamental needs has taken up almost all of our waking days.
Yeah,
for and now we have all this extra time to think about this shit. So our generation has this like sort of almost embarrassing question of abundance.
Yeah.
And
totally.
I think like it's a difficult question. Yeah. What's the ideal day look like? You know, what's your paradise look like?
I think
that's honestly like it's such a crazy thing to think about. Is you're totally right. We do have this luxury of abundance, and this it's almost laughable that we're asking these questions.
And it's like it brings you like stress inside.
Yeah, like what the fuck? Like in the 30s, they literally, it's like, I have to work to live.
Yeah.
And here we are being like, do I have to work to live?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, can I not work and live?
Like it's crazy to think about. Like, but I'm still stuck on the point that
where can people get the Musician's Compass and your first book, I Am Free? Can you still buy I Am Free?
Yeah, so it's not like I advertise that one too much, but it is available from my website. I Am Free is available.
What's the website?
delsuelo.net.
DelSuelo.net. So we'll link it in all the descriptions of wherever you are.
And this is the new book.
Yep, I've got vinyl for the new record too. There's a music lesson at the back of this book.
I love it. Yeah, I was looking at it.
Yeah, because every song is in a different mode, and so there's a lesson about modes for anyone who's ever been curious about that. And,
love it.
Cool. And where can people find you on social medias?
Social medias is at Del_Suelo, but I might be on my way out, boys.
The big announcement.
All right.
You heard it here first.
I like it.
You heard it here first.
So you're thinking about using your name now, or being more? What are you thinking of? Like, because I know Del Suelo is more of like your side thing. So what are you thinking of?
Well, like I'm working on a new album right now.
Oh, nice.
And I could talk about that for everybody. You all are tired of hearing my voice already.
No.
But so I've deleted all of the social media apps off my phone.
Holy shit!
I haven't been like I went
Crazy.
on. I reloaded Instagram yesterday because I did the TED Talk and I wanted to make a story post.
Yeah.
But beyond that, like I just wanted to see life outside, and I could talk about this forever. But I think I might bail.
Nice. You might bail.
Yeah, I might bail, and like I don't know what the next step is, but
So
I'm thinking about making a record and then just releasing it and putting up posters and doing it the old-fashioned way.
Cool.
Because I've tried so hard on social media, and like I'm not selling any more than I would have otherwise.
Right.
And I'm spending hours a day on this thing, and it's manipulating my brain.
Yeah.
And
nothing but negative energy too over there.
yeah.
Fuck.
Of course. So pack rats.
Okay, we're doing this.
Ooh, we're gonna fucking.
Anyways, I'm not sure about deleting social media, so give me a follow.
Yeah, it's hard. So pack rats for the listeners.
You know, it's one thing to winter bike, but it's another thing to be off social media.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'm ready to be that much of a freak.
So hit me with the chorus, man.
I'd love to stay in chat.
Yeah, sorry. It's a little bit out of tune, but that's kind of like how I like it.
All right. We're singing.
Right. And 1, 2, 3, 4, chorus. Sorry.
All right. Oh shit! You got a guitar pick on you?
I love to stay in chat. I don't, but you know what?
All right. I'll
I think you have fingers.
Love to stay in chat, but my beers are running low. I'ma step away and change out of these clothes. We can kick it later on if you keep it on the down low. Back to the stage, back it up for the next.
Right on, man.
Not even practiced or anything.
I love it. All right, thanks, Eric, for coming on in, man. We were so pumped to have you, man. That was amazing.
Thanks for having
It was
me.
incredible. Thanks a lot for talking about. I know we didn't talk about your TED Talk that you had the other night. Where can people watch that?
It should be uploaded to the TEDx YouTube channel in early April.
Okay.
The title of it is "What the Music Industry is Actually Selling and Why It's Dying."
Oh, I love it. And you can find that on X40K FM. All right, man. I love it.
I love to stay and chat, but my beers are